Welcome back to Mike's Gun World. Today we're on part 2 of the Whippet 410 series. We're going to reassemble the gun and wrap this series up. So look, if you're liking our videos, you're liking our content, please hit like, subscribe, hit the little bell so every time we drop new content you get notified that we have. All your support's always appreciated. But without further ado, let's get going to the reassembly of the Whippet 410. All right, so let's get going with the reassembly. Some of you may have noticed my penny sitting here. That tells me where the center is under the camera, so I don't have to keep looking up at the video as we're shooting it. I know that I'm on camera as much as possible. So, like I said, it's counterintuitive putting this back together. We're going to start with the locking block and locking block arms, and then one of the springs for the lever that helps move that locking block up and down. But it's important to note that your locking block and arms sit in this position inside the frame of the gun, and a lot of this is really kind of hard to see on screen, so I just want to show you here in case my big mitts get in the way and you can't really see. But once this is in place, the collar fits right here onto the locking block arms, and it slides in there. And then underneath this collar is the forked spring, which is going to slide in here. So all the time that we're trying to do this inside the gun, we have to make sure that the stud here is actually going through the hole in the back of the receiver here. And we're going to have to keep some pressure on that spring as we put that all back together, because the next thing that'll go in place will be the actual release lever, which slips through here, and that's going to start to pin everything in place, and that's where we really start to make some progress. So let's get going with that. And like I said, the pin goes right to left, so we're gonna take the locking block and arms and put them in there. Put it inside the frame, and then try to line up the holes. Very hard to see on camera, but the holes are definitely lined up right here. I'm just going to take the pin and by feel push that pin through on the right side and watch it come up. Fell out on me. Watch it come up. Make sure that we remain aligned and we can get it through the locking block, which we did right there. So the pins come up, we're going to turn it over. Oops, don't move the penny. And then we're going to tap that pin into place. Okay, so that's step number 1. That's all oriented correctly. So now we're going to have to get this collar in place, and this is where it becomes a little bit trickier on camera to watch, because I really have to almost hold the frame upside down where you can't see it. But we're going to drop it in place here. And we're going to slide it forward and get it into position. Now, this is where you almost need 3 hands, but I'm going to use a thumb and forefinger to hold that in place. And then, oh, my spring fell off. Okay, then remember the short side goes to the basically the right side of the frame. The dimple is on this side, so we're gonna slide this into place, and then we're gonna get this arm through that little notch in the back of the receiver, so we can be able to put some pressure on the spring. The collar's coming out on me, but there. So I know it's hard to see, but it is all in place, and we're actually ready to put the latch and get the latch in place and get the stud to come through the collar. And it takes a little bit of maneuvering to get it in there. Don't think we quite have everything pushed back far enough yet. There we go. Okay, so we've got the latch in place. It is now holding the forked spring here in place on the correct side of the gun. And there's only one way that notch will fit onto the collar. And it's definitely on the collar now. We can hold that together. And at this point, we want to get the screw back into place. Now, you can get this in there finger tight. Again, it's really tight to work on in here. I like to try to get my forefinger and thumb around the frame. So again, that's blocking the view, but you can finger tighten this screw in place. It goes in fairly easy. And then once you snug it up, with the main spring out, it's a little bit easier to get a screwdriver in there. And try to just tighten that screw down a bit. You can see we are getting a few rotations out of it. And that's it. That one's tight. So that's in place, and we now are actually operating the locking block itself. We do have the other pin to get in place, the pin that goes on the left side of the gun. Again, the stud goes through the little hole in the back of the receiver. I'm going to drop it in here. The point of this sits on a little dimple here, the back of the arm, the locking block arm. And this is where, kind of brute force method, I will use a pair of needle nose to pull this back just a little bit and push that point down into place. Oh, she went too far on me. And that will happen. So I'm going to shut the camera off for 1 second while I get that out. Okay, I got it out. I actually used a punch to pull it out of there. Press the spring and pull it out. So it's important, again, to get that stud into the hole back here. It's almost, I can almost get this in with finger pressure. Just put pressure on that spring, and we're going to try to get that point into the little dimple in the back of the arm. Just like that. It's almost in place. Use a punch to drop it down. And maneuver it into the dimple. I do believe we're there. We are. So, oh, there. It just popped right into the notch now. So now both of those springs are in place and fully functional. So the locking block really at this point is working. If you were to take the barrel and put it in place, it's going to lock exactly how it should, and then release exactly how it should. So we're done there. Now we get the fun part. So putting the hammer in is fairly simple. We just drop it in through the top of the frame, and then you want to make sure that you've got your trigger pulled all the way back so that the sear is in the correct orientation with the hammer. And then we want to try to get those holes lined up again, which I have the holes lined up perfectly with the hammer. I guess, another way to do this would be to leave a punch in here, and then you'd be able to slide the pin through and just follow the punch back through. My method works too. I'm going to just start getting the pin through the back side of the frame and I can see down through there. I'm sure you can't see it on camera, but we're going to get that hole lined up with the hammer, and then put some pressure on to start getting the pin through, and it came right up through, no problem. And let's turn the frame over, and then we will just tap that pin back into place. Now, we don't have the mainspring in, but the trigger is in the right orientation. If you pull the hammer back, you can hear it clicking. You can hear the sear clicking and holding that back. If you pull, it won't go forward until you pull the trigger and release the sear, and the hammer will move forward. Okay, so here comes the most difficult part of getting this back together. We are going to take the mainspring with the little cap on the end and try to get this into place. And remember, that cap will sit right in this hole. We're going to try to get it into this hole right here. That holds it in place. So like the nose of this cap, you think about it, it's going to be sitting on that little, it's not a notch, it's a hole. Now, the way the stud goes on, the bigger piece goes to the top. We're going to put that in place on the hammer right here. It slides right on the hammer. And this is where the biggest problem is getting enough pressure on this spring, because there is a ton of pressure on the spring. What I've done is taken what I've done in the past. Let's see if we can do it quickly in one shot here, is get as much pressure by pulling this back. I just lost the cap. Pulling the spring toward me, using the frame as leverage. And I'm using the flat part of a screwdriver right here to pull back. And as you're pulling back, you're trying to keep pressure down so that the cap will actually pop into place. And I'll be honest, it takes a few tries. It is not easy, and this is under a ton of pressure. The reason why I like the screwdriver is it's got a lot of length to it, and it's just easier to hang on to. And it's just gonna keep fighting me. I can't quite get enough pressure on that spring to there. There it is. She popped in place. So this is when you want to be real careful. We're going to take a punch and a little smithing hammer, and we're going to just tap this very slowly until the beveled part here slips into the frame. We're just going to tap it down slow. See if we get that on camera. Just keep knocking it down very slowly and let it just jump into place. Should hear an audible click when it goes in. You don't want to go too far, because I don't want to knock it back out the other side and have to do it again. There it is. There was the click, and it's in place. And now, basically, our action is completely back together. The locking block is working. Pull the hammer back. Perfect. That's how we get it back together. Then, the other parts, I'm going to turn on the other camera so I can show how to put the buttstock back on and then actually get the barrel back in place. And we're done with the reassembly. Okay, so if you remember correctly, in the back of the buttstock, inside the butt plate, there's a screw that sticks all the way through. I don't know if we're going to be able to get that on camera. I think I moved my penny. You can see the end of the screw right there. So when I was taking this apart, that screw was a little bit difficult to get started. So I'm going to just take a little bit of lubriplate and a small brush. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease back here in the back of the receiver where that screw goes in. Hopefully make it just a touch easier when we tighten it up. And need to take it down again. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure you're holding the buttstock like this down so that screw stays in that hole, because if it comes out of the hole, it is very difficult to actually get out. So we're going to slide the whole frame into place on the buttstock. And something's catching. There we go. Get the notches lined up. There we go. And then we're going to take our flashlight again and look down here and see where that slot is. And it's oriented pretty much like this. That's how we're going to put the screwdriver in there and try to get it started. Not sure if I got a turn or not. I'll hold the screwdriver down there or the flashlight down there so I can see and get on that screw and get her turning. Yep, we got her. It's about the easiest I've ever done that. Yeah, she's in place. I'm going to try to put maybe another quarter turn on it if possible. It's all really hard to see. These are small parts. I have big hands, and you can't always get a good visual, but you get a good idea of what it is I'm trying to do. There we go. I'm back in the notch. And another quarter turn. And we've got the, we've got the buttstock back on. Everything's working good. Real simple. Let's get the butt plate on. Two screws. Phillips head, which of course I don't have out on the screwdriver. Grab one of those. Boring part of the video, but get the butt plate in place. Okay, that's all done. And then really at this point, all we got to do is get the barrel seated on the lug, close it, and she's locked in place. That's all looking good. And then the stock, the forestock with the spring, and it does have a little spring right here. That spring's got to be forward. We'll just drop it in place. Let me get a better angle. Just going to drop it in place here, and all it takes is gentle pressure to lock that in place. And our Whippet 410 is back together. She's opening, closing, cocking, and firing correctly. Okay, so that's it. I made it seem a little bit easier than it really is. I'll be honest with you, the first time I did this, by trial and error, it took me quite a while to figure it all out and get some of those springs together. The main spring is really, really, really tight in there. That was probably the most difficult part. But I do hope that you found it useful. If you ever come across one of these, and again, there's many different manufacturers, concluding with Steven Savage toward the end. So they made a lot of them. Again, the value is not all that high, 100, 150 bucks on these, but they are fun little guns to shoot. As soon as the weather breaks for us, we've been minus 25 to minus 10. I think we're probably 5 above today. It's pretty hard to get on the range and shoot. But I definitely want to get this out and shoot because it is a ton of fun. That is your Whippet 410 top break breech loading shotgun. Hope you're enjoying the videos. Remember, hit like, subscribe, hit the bell. Every time we drop new content, you get notified. All your support is always very much appreciated. We'll talk to you soon.